who just joined us. We are very welcome you today on our webinar, Green Walls, Quality Assurance for Technical Standards and Fire Regulations, How Vertical Greening Contributes to a Nature-Positive Economy. We are proud to have two amazing speakers today, Thomas Engel and Vera Enzi-Zechner. I will introduce them a bit later, but first I will introduce our organization. Oh, sorry. Yes, my name is Tatiana Konchenko. I'm a General Secretary of EFB. Our organization, our federation, represents all green roofs and wall associations of Europe. Currently, we have 18 national associations as members of EFB, and we also are connected with other European and world networks in our sector. Thank you. Here we can see the logos of our federations. We have 19 countries represented within our networks through 18 national associations, because we have not only national but also regional associations. And next slide, please. Through our national members, we have access to many small and medium enterprises all around Europe. Our national associations have their members, companies, universities, municipalities, also sometimes individuals, and all over it's more than 1,600 members in total. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yes, and now I'm very proud to introduce our speakers for today. Thomas Engel, Fire Research Group Lead in Technical University of Munich, and he will introduce us today to a research project, Fire Safe Green, which intends to provide findings on the behavior of facade greening depending on the type of the system and the species of plants. And Vera Enzi-Zechner, who is the Vice President of EFB and Business Board Member of Grünstadt Grau, and also EU Correspondent in Austrian National Association, expert on international level on nature-based solutions with master degree in landscape architecture, and expert on many diverse aspects of green roofs and walls, indoor and outdoor building greening. Thank you very much for joining us today. And the first speaker for today will be Thomas Engel. He will continue with his presentation. Then we will hear the presentation of Vera Enzi-Zechner, and then we will have a Q&A session, which will be the last half an hour of our event. We will also let you know about the upcoming events. And yes, thank you. Thomas, please, can you continue with your presentation?
Yes. Thank you, Tatiana. I hope you all could hear me very good. I'm very glad to be here and to talk about our research project. We started about 3 years ago, and this time there were only very little research in the context of fire safety for green facades. The most fire tests were made in Austria, in Vienna, and 3 years ago we started with our research project. And we all know that the demand for green facade is very high. Thus, it's increasing. Lots of people want to build more green, sustainable buildings, green roofs, green facades, and so on. But we also know that the most critical and serious fire usually occur in relation to the facade. For example, we all know Grenfell Tower or the fire in Valencia in 2024. So on the one side, we have critical fires in the context of facades. And on the other side, we want green buildings. That means we want to put plants, combustible plants on the facade. And our question was, is it really critical, and how critical it is? And what are probably things, regulation, and the other things to ensure that we can ensure fire safety, but still be able to build green buildings. And at the first beginning, it was very interesting. I'm a civil engineer in my background and also a fire engineer. I worked a long time in fire research and also fire engineering, mostly with timber structures, also multi-story timber buildings, for example, and so on. In the first beginning, we looked what are the difference in the system. You can see lots of green facades. And is there a difference in these systems between, for example, a high-rise building or wall-based green and also wall-based things? But on the other side, we have only small plants, a little like balconies. For example, here we all know it probably from Italy. It's more plants on a balcony than a real green facade, and this is mostly hedges in the front of a building and not only a really green facade. For example, the picture in Germany are also lots of hedges on the roof, and although you could say on the facade, or probably it's the same, it's also a roof, mostly like a wall, but lots of green. But is it really a green facade? So at the beginning, it was very interesting for us, but it was also very important for us to ensure what is the right system we can focus, and how we can investigate these facades in the context of fire safety with our fire tests. And we made these fire tests for public money, though it's very important for us to investigate in a product neutral way. So we want to establish, you can say, general principles and not to put money to one manufacturer. And at the beginning, we focused on climbing plants on trellis. The reason, or climbing aids, the reason was, first of all, it's the mostly used system. It's the cheapest system. And in our opinion, we were able, with lots of fire tests and other things, to ensure fire safety in a product neutral way with general principles. The number 4 and 5 are also very common in use. They're expensive, more expensive than number 2, but very interesting in the context of fire safety because they are rear ventilated facades. We all know for rear ventilated facades, for example, from events like Grenfell Tower or also Valencia. So it's a very critical system from a fire safety point of view, but it's very specific from one manufacturer to the other manufacturer. So it would be difficult for us 3 years ago to investigate them product neutral. So we focused on number 2. And I was very lucky, I think half a year after we started our research, the colleagues in Poland, the ETB, made fire tests on a specific living wall. And these tests were very critical. But it's one system. I do not want to say that all living walls are critical in a fire safety point of view, but they could be. They made fire tests. In my opinion, number 4 and 5, there's necessary that the manufacturers which establish or manufacture these systems made their own fire tests, mostly large-scale fire tests, because we know from the past, from every facade systems, that we have to look at the whole system in context of rear-ventilated facades, and they have to make their fire tests, and that is probably the right way to ensure fire safety for number 4 and 5. That means at the moment you can use living walls. I do not want to say that there's every time a problem in context of fire safety point of view, but we have to look at these systems. There could be critical systems like the test from the colleagues in Poland. It also could be systems which are common in the fire safety point of view, but we have to ensure fire safety and look specific on the system we used because rear-ventilated facades are mostly critical. And all I will tell you in the next slides focused on number 2, that means climbing plants on trellis or climbing aids. And they also include a little bit number 1 and 3, but mostly focus on number 2. And in the first beginning, we made lots of fire tests because we want to know, is there a difference between the plant species, for example, or does a plant which is 5 years old burns different to a new young plant, for example? And is there a difference between, for example, summer and winter, and so on? So is there a difference between these species? That's really important. So have we ensure that we only use some species? Is there really a problem with essential oils, for example? In the past, there were lots of discussion about plants in context of green facades. Do not use plants with essential oils. So our point was to investigate, is this really a problem? And we made lots of fire tests, and it was certainly to be accepted. The most thing is the moisture content. That means you can see on the left and right side, a dried plant burns faster than a vital plant. So it's certainly to be expected that it's not very new. Every wildland research, fire researcher know this. But it's important for us because we see it's a very short duration. So in the next fire test, it was very interesting how the short duration, how critical this is. Is it enough to break a window, for example? Or is it the heat flux high enough because of the short duration to ignite combustible building materials? And we ensure, or we can conclude that the plant species is not relevant in the context of facades fire. It means the same of essential oils, the same means for the different in age, or 5 year older, 5 year younger plant. When it's maintained, there is no big difference. Though you can use, in our opinion, we tested lots of plant species for Central Europe, typical. These plant species there's no different in the context of a facade fire. That means not when we would be a violent fire researcher, there is a difference, but in the context of a big facade fire, there is no really different. On the other side, we wanted to investigate, we all know we want to build with timber. In the past, I made lots of fire tests and fire research in the context of multi-story timber buildings. And so it would be easy to combine these topics. So we have timber buildings with timber or wooden facades, and also we have green facades. And so our central question was, when we combine wooden and green facades, is there interaction that occurs in the event of fire? That means, is the heat flux, you can see it on the heat flux, I will put a laser pointer, is the heat flux of these, for example, green facades, the heat flux high enough to ignite a wooden facade? It's interesting because when we work with wooden facades, we have fire stops, floor by floor. That means in every floor we have steel shield fire stops. That means these fire stops slow down the fire spread along the facades. So now when we put plants, both these fire stops in front of these fire stops, the question is the burning green facade, and it could be more green than in this picture, is it the heat flux high enough to ignite the wooden facade? It means, did we have like a fuse effect? So the fire spread is faster than without the plant. And there we also made lots of fire tests, and I only want to show the results. These systems are both a fire stop. You can see we put a lot of green on the facade. It's not a good maintained facade. We want to build up the worst case scenario and to have the critical point. And after this, we have these systems. That means we have a little bit of charring, yes, but there was no independent ignite. So there was no independent burning. It means in result, a burning plant and lots of burning plant, a burning green facade, it's not the heat flux high enough and it's normally maintained to ignite a wooden facade. So it's possible to combine these systems. Especially we are from Germany and we have special regulations for wooden facades on buildings up to 8-9 stories. It's common to use, but we have the fire stops and it's possible to combine green facades and wooden facades. And I will cannot in 20 minutes show you all these tests, but these were at the beginning. We made lots of small scale fire tests, medium scale fire tests, and we want to have most of the results, for example, plant species and also wooden facades in combination and so on. But in the end, it was really important to us to show to everyone, okay, this what we made in small and medium scale fire tests work in practice, work in full scale, and there is or there is not a fire safety problem when we use green facades. And so we made lots of full scale fire tests at the end, and in total 8 fire tests, and also directly on a wall, like on the left 2 pictures, but also on balconies. And we all know we want to, when we talk about green facades, we mostly talk about urban areas. In urban areas, there's not much space due to the high rents. So the people use the balconies normally as storage. There are everything on a balcony. And after COVID, it's a lot of more. It means from a fire safety point of view, we have lots of fire load on the balconies. So when we put green facades to a building, it's not the only thing to look is the wall. It's also interesting at what effect will take place at the balconies. Is there a burning green facade? Will the fire be able to go inside the building? So that's the interesting thing. And so we made 8 fire tests, and I will only show you a few because we have not enough time to look after all these interesting tests. And first of all, we made fire tests up to 12 to 14 meters, and it was a normally vital green facade. It was a maintained facade, though it's not like a hedge. That's important because when you have a green facade, I will come later back on this point, it's not typical. And we see now the flames are burning and it's lots of fire load at the bottom of the facade fire test stand. And the heat of the flames dried out small parts of the green facade. This green facade later will be ignited and burned down. You can see it in the video, like small flare-ups, you can say. And the interesting question is there really is this a problem for a building? And everybody think when you can see this test, when we could ensure that every green facade is vital and maintained, we could stop our research at this point. With these constructs, with these type of facades, there is no problem, fire safety from a fire safety point of view. So we could stop the research project. But we all know green facades the plants could also be dried. So these tests, I think everybody could see it. There's no independent burning. Only small parts will burn down because of the dried out areas. And there's no burning after these areas. It's no problem. You can use it on an 8-9-story building. But we also have dried plants. So that means we put our plants, you could say, like in a heating tent. So it's very unrealistic. It's also the worst case. Normally, plants have moisture content about 200 to 300%. Our plants have 4 to 7% moisture content. That means we put them 3 up to 5 days in the 80 degrees heating tent, and they were really dried. It's very difficult to put them on the wall without losing any leaves. So it's a really dry green facade. And that took a lot of time to prepare these fire tests, but in the end, it was a very short and very short fire tests. And you can see when the flames will reach the green facade, the fire goes up, but it's really interesting to look how short the duration is. It's only a very short duration. And above you can see wooden panels. And this was interesting for us because we want to know if there is a fire from a green facade, from a dried green facade, which go up, if there are problems for combustible building components. For example, like wooden roof trusses. Is the burning green facade, could it ignite, for example, a roof? It would be a problem when every burning green facade will bring to a burning roof. We have still a problem. And you could say, or you could see, there is a burning of the whole facade because it's dried material. It's different to the vital green facade, but the duration is very interesting. It's only a very small time slot, and that's very interesting. And when we look, for example, on the wooden panels, these wooden panels above the fire tests stand, after the test, they look like, you can see it in the picture. There was no charring. We have temperature above 300 degrees. Normally, wood and timber will burn at 300 degrees, but the duration is interesting. It's like the same when you put your finger through a candle. When you only do it very shortly, it's not high enough to hurt you. It's the same like here. We have a very small duration and very short duration, and that means there's no burning, it's only a little bit, you could say, of soot. You can see it here where on the measurements measurements are fixed. There's a little bit different in the color, so a little bit shoots, but no charring. There was no burning or anything like that. That is what first of all. On the other side, we also made lots of tests. I will only show you this. It's also the worst case. It's the balcony tests with dried plants, and a lots of dried plants. So you could ask, why is like a green prison? Nobody wants to live like this. Yes, that's right. Nobody wants the whole balcony in green. But it's common to have one or probably 1 meter or less green stripes, let's say, from floor 1 to floor 8. And though it's the same, we want to build up the most critical worst case scenario. And though we put it completely in green. And when you look on the right, on the time, it's the same. It's a very short duration. So if it's vital plant, we have no independent burning, it's no problem. And when it's dried, it's very short duration. And you can see we have plastic chairs, at every balcony, and also close horses. And this is burning because we have no top cover over the last balcony. And it's normal that the flame want to go back to the rear wall, the flame want to go inside, and there was no balustrade. So you can see there's no, in the balconies, the flame directly could be go inside the balcony because there's no balustrade. So it's also the worst case scenario. For us, is what's very important we have 300 to 400 measurement devices on every test. So we took you can see it here, lots of measurements data for us to see how much heat flux will arrive on the rear wall, how much heat flux will arrive here, and so on. But it's also, you can see it with the furnishing. It's visual to see how difficult green facades in the context of climbing plants on trellis really are. And after this, we have our conclusion. I have to say the conclusion is both. It's one on the results of the fire test, but on the other hand, it's the results of meetings with practical experts. So that means we have a big group of people from the industry, people, engineers which work with green facade, and we all go together and we want to write down our conclusion are not only the conclusion from a fire safety point of view, it also from a structural building physics and so on. And it was important for us as few as possible. When there's no problem in the context of fire safety, we don't want to write down lots of guidelines and things. And though it's only a few points. First of all, living walls or wall-based systems, we have to ensure fire safety and we have to look for the specific system. I told you before, the colleagues from Poland made fire tests. I also collected lots of tests from different persons or different manufacturers all over Europe and all over the world. And there are really good systems in our context of fire safety, but also systems with combustible materials and re-ventilated. And we know from the past, it's not very difficult to know that combustible building materials in combination with a re-ventilated facades, it become critical. So I do not want to say that's really important for me that living walls are a problem, but they could be. So we have to look and we have to ensure fire safety at the moment, because there's no really test standard for living walls. And so we have to specific look. For climbing bands or non-combustible climbing aids, it's really important, non-combustible climbing aids, they can be generally elevated and they have a lower risk, you can say, in fire point safety point of view. The really important thing is the moisture content. So that means when you have dried out facades, it's more critical. All of our tests, we put the worst case scenario. That means our conclusions, our results are also worked with dried plants. And the really, really most important thing, and we in Germany, for example, we only discuss at the moment with the building authorities about this point, is care and maintenance. When there's a green facade with there's one care and maintain cycle per year, it's okay. But when we have like a hedge, like it's not a normal green facade, there's a problem in the context of fire safety. but not only in a fire safety issue, because it's only a stability issue. Also that means there's too heavy load, though we have to ensure care and maintenance, and that is the most important thing from our investigations. And we made a lots of tests, so we know about something about the flame, but we also know in general, it's very important, for example, for the fire department. We also have lots of participants from the fire departments all over Germany. And every green facade, which is vital, are self-extinguishing. And when it's not vital, when it's dried out, it's only burns a few seconds, and then later it's also be done. There is no still burning. So that means the fire department did not have to reach the facade and extinguish at specific points. When it's a normal, maintained, it's the same. It's very important that it's maintained. It's not a hedge. A hedge will be different. Green facade. So it's very good from a fire safety point of view. That means self-extinguishing is really nice thing of green facades. And we made only a few things. For us, it was important with regard on the test data to have 500 millimeters between a green facade and a window. So that does not mean that it's to break the window, but when the window are open, it's possible. We have a distance, 50 centimeters or 500 millimeters between a green facade and a window. On the other side, we also, and that's not only a fire safety point, it's only, for example, for building, construction, construction point of view, that we do not want that our green facade will go inside our roof or our facade. So we have a distance between 500 millimeters between combustible building materials like roof trusses and our green facade. And on the other side, we have non-combustible, it's really important, climbing aids. And on balconies, for example, you see it in the video, we have to use closed balustrades. So that means normally balustrades, but made of non-combustible materials and closed. That means not open, because the fire can't reach inside the balcony. And for wooden facades in combination with green facades, at the end, the conclusion was that we have at least 15 centimeters or 150 millimeters distance between a wooden facade, between a wooden facade and a green facade. And in the end, it was a whole thing that we made lots of tests, but in the end, we came to the conclusion that a well-maintained green facade with climbing plants on trellis is not really a problem in a fire from a fire safety point of view. The really important thing, and that's big discussion at the moment, for example, in Germany, how we can ensure care and maintenance, so it's not become a hedge. When we have a difference between a normally green facade to a hedge, it will be really different for everybody, and it's other fire load. That means it's not the same. It's not the same which our tests are focused on. It's different, though. The really important point is care and maintenance. Everything else is not as a big problem in the context of fire safety. So you can say at the end. I thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you for excellent presentation. Great to hear to see the person who really burns these facades, so the regulations, standards, and conclusions are made right. We have some questions in the chat, but we will wait until the end of the webinar. After Vera's presentation, we will have Q&A session. And in the beginning, I was a bit too excited, so I did not introduce actually GoNaturePositive project who supports our webinar today. So EFB, as part of our activities, we also participate in research and development projects, and one of the projects which we actually work on now is GoNaturePositive project, which accelerates the transition to nature-positive economy. And Vera Enzi-Zechner, despite all her work on green roofs and walls, practically and theoretically also coordinates this project from EFB point of view. And today she will not only tell you about Austrian Standard for vertical greening, but also how this standard and green walls in general contribute to nature-positive economy. Vera Enzi-Zechner, please, your presentation.
Thanks a lot, Tatiana. I hope the sound is okay. Can you hear me well? Okay, great. Yes, hello, good afternoon, everybody. We've heard obviously a lot about me already. Now it's time for some content. So I'm today the second part of the webinar, which is called Standardization of Vertical Greenery. I have an important example that I would like to bring to your attention, which is the Austrian Green Wall Standard ÖNORM L1136, which you will be hearing about today. And we have the pleasure also to run our webinar today with much support from the Connecting Nature-Based Enterprises platform. And I would say my first target is to give you a bit of framework also why that's actually happening. And Tatiana already told you about our great project called GoNaturePositive. It's funded by the European Commission. It's actually a 4-year project where we are really working on the economic change of the current situation. We try to look at different sectors, also the building sector, and how it could potentially change to be nature positive. So we're especially looking at opportunities of green buildings in that sense. In case you want to check out the project, please go to GoNaturePositive.eu and get your share. What we've been doing so far in this project is we have written a concept note on what a nature positive economy is, who delivers a nature positive economy, and how it could be implemented. The direct link to today goes back to basically last autumn when we had a really, really nice webinar on mainstreaming green buildings across the EU. So we were thinking, what's what's the roadblock currently? Yeah, why can we not scale as fast as we expect? And one of the potential identified drivers was standardization of technology. So, and this is where we arrive to today's point. So in case you're interested about rewatching this interesting webinar, you can do so. From today's viewpoint, GoNaturePositive project is doing a lot of stakeholder consultation, so expert roundtables, policy dialogues, interactive other formats, surveys, interviews, training, capacity building in the field. So in case you would like to connect with the project and stay informed, please use this QR code that you can see on the screen right now. Which brings us to today. So I also see that we have a lot of participants coming from the Connecting Nature-Based Enterprises platform. Thanks for joining us today. We are also present in that platform to bring together specialists and experts on green roofs and green walls from very different perspectives, policymaking, the industry, of course, but also building owners and users. Yeah, to just get together in a lively community and see how we can make green buildings more common and how we can make them even better and more nature positive and more biodiverse. So, coming to today's main topic, the Austrian Standard ÖNORM L1136. So what's the content of the next potential 15 minutes. So I'm going to have just a few thoughts about the importance of technology standards, also for vertical greenery. I'm going to give you a quick overview on what's existing on a European perspective in vertical. And then we will take a look at the standardization example from Austria. I will give you a quick overview on the content of what you can also expect from this standard. It's now also available in English for purchase, which is, I think, a very, very big step. Yeah, and we just have some concluding remarks, and then we will see what kind of questions you might bring to the table. So one of the first things why standards are important, and especially important now and today, is that in our field we see a lot of ongoing implementation of EU policy that should lead to a certain technology mainstreaming. Just to give you a few examples here, the EU Nature Restoration Law should revert the loss of urban green spaces, for example. The Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, EPBD, where it is about measures on green infrastructure, also for renovation plans and increasing the energy performance of buildings by installing green roofs and green walls. Also the harmonization with investments in solar energy on buildings. Then we have the Energy Efficiency Directive, EED, that should reduce energy consumption in public buildings, especially also focusing on greenery on roofs and walls. It should deliver energy savings with implementing this technology. Then also, of course, we have potentials in the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, which is also in current implementation, where it's about wastewater management plans and how green spaces, nature-based solutions can contribute. And a lot of others also. I won't bore you too long, but the Environmental Product Declaration plays a role, of course, for standardization. The EU Biocides Regulation, Taxonomy, CSRD, and the omnibus activity currently linked to the field of sustainability reporting, the new European Bauhaus. So a lot of good reasons to get our sector, green roof and green wall sector, the green building sector, ready. So we need these standards now in order to bring European policy on a national level, and probably fast. Also, why now standards and norms? We've been doing a lot of green wall projects already. Sometimes something can happen. And then there is a big question. How did it happen? Why did it happen? Can we avoid it in the future? So unclear competencies, responsibilities are one of the main issues, why probably a wall could fall dry, right, Thomas? That would not be good for you. You just said it. But also maintenance knowledge, not cutting for years, then just cutting the parts where the plant is still attached to the building, a little wind event, and then the wall comes to the street, or just simple planning mistakes. Putting some climbing plants with a growth of like an elephant leg on a thin rope of stainless steel with 2-3 millimeter dimension. That's not a good thing to do. So we can make mistakes, and the standard helps to set a minimum basis and understanding for a sector. So these things probably don't happen. To my understanding, also a very, very important point on why standards and norms are important, not just in Austria, but in any EU country, is innovation and the future, because we need a baseline. And you just saw the EU policies and directives we're currently working on to bring them on a national level. And a lot of questions come with this. I gave you a nice project here. It's currently happening in Austria. It's called Glasgrün, and it deals with refurbing glass buildings with vertical green for energy renovation. So how can a green wall shade the building and contribute to energy efficiency and energy savings effectively? So, and how can it be standardized? A second, what's going on? I'm going back, now I'm going front. Second example, why standards, of course, will be also important in the future, that we have a stock in vertical greenery. So what you see here on the left side, the pictures from 2012, this is actually an over 80 years old Parthenocissus tricuspidata on a heritage building in Vienna. And what you see on the right side is the picture from 2025. And this whole building, it's a heritage building, it needed a renovation. The windows needed to be changed, the facade, the roof, needed an energy concern renovation, and it was possible to keep the plant. Of course, it's a very old plant. We can also ask ourselves, if we just dig it out and replant it, how many years or decades will it again need to cover the space and provide microclimate? So these kind of things are also important and could be future integrations into standards. So we are always moving, and especially the vertical sector is developing fast. Standards, norms, guidelines in Europe, just a quick overview. You will get some links in the chat now, I think. So apart from our standards, which was published 2021. There in Austria, for example, guidelines, the Green Wall guideline of the city of Vienna, coupled with a best practice collection. There is the fire protection technical requirement paper. And of course, there's the German FLL guideline from 2018. Thomas already cited it today. But we have seen also 3 very recent publications on green walls or vertical greenery from UK, for example, the Fire Protection Agency, a guideline to managing risks of fire, published just last year. In France, the professional recommendations for green facade cladding systems, and also in Italy. In case you're interested, you will receive the links so you can take also a look at this document. So ÖNORM L1136 is an Austrian standard. Its home is the Austrian Standard Institute. Is, to my understanding, from a European context, a very far advanced and innovative institution. As VFB, so the Austrian Green Roof Association, we have a long-term cooperation with the Austrian Standards Institute. So already since 30 years, we are having standardization processes. It started with green roofs quite early. This standard is now just being updated, and it will change from the L standardization environment, which is landscaping, to B, the building. In 2017, also an indoor greenery, vertical indoor greenery covering standard was launched, and in 2021, then the last part, outdoor vertical green. So what's the scope of application of the standard? So it applies for design, installation, maintenance of durable perennial vegetation of different kinds of walls and facades outdoors. It also covers greening with plantainers that are placed next to walls, are mounted on walls, besides living walls and ground-based climbers. It can be applied also to the greening of pergolas, dry stone walls, gabions, noise barriers, etc., with an inclination of 30 to 150 degrees. The only part basically that is not currently covered by standards are pitched roof from 30 to 45 degrees, so neither in the L1131 or in the L1136. Content. The standard has 47 pages. It's fully packed. The first part is about categorization. So how many different kinds of systems do we have and what are the specifications? Second part is design. Then comes installation and maintenance for the different categories. And the last part is also really important because it contains a lot of mechanisms on how to evaluate the development and the other supporting materials for the management. This is quite the same to what Thomas said already. So we have ground-based climbers, self-clinging and with climbing support in the first categories 1 and 2. There is a plantainer-based category number 3. It can be ground or wall-based. And the last categories 4 and 5 are living wall systems, basically one version with partial coverage and the second version with a full coverage. The interesting thing about this standard especially is that it comes along with a project framework. So the first part is about how to define site conditions, or how to set site conditions for a project, and that site conditions are important for a project. We already had the question earlier in the chat if you should, for example, put, let's say, an ivy wall on a north-based facade of a building, which is a wooden building. Yeah, really good questions. And with these kind of questions, the different site conditions that come from a climate and weather specific perspective to a building specific perspective to a plant specific perspective can help to set a transparent and correct framework for a project. I will not go into the lots of details. You can really already see that this norm is quite packed, and it brings in a lot of things that must be considered when designing and planning a green wall on the building. The second part that I also find quite innovative, it's a standard that sets a greening objectives. Yeah, and the greening objective is basically covered by well-explained process. It covers the phases of design, installation, and maintenance, and it agrees that there is a coverage that needs to be reached in the project, coverage of plants. It also defines when the greening objective is reached. So it also comes along with a timetable with certain milestones on what development to reach when, which is of course as well bound to the planting plan. So when defining the screening objectives, you of course have input parameters like the total green surface, some ecologic factors like the number of species, design objective, microclimatic performance, economic factors, building physics, and then you have a lot of other influence factors like the growth rate of the plants you're using, of course, the category, local site conditions, maintenance and care. The design also comes along with a coverage ratio. Yeah, so the standard says a theoretical coverage ratio of 100% means that the area to be greened is projected to completely covered with vegetation and the underlying structure is no longer visible. And you can evaluate the coverage degree with a picture analysis. And of course, in the design section, there's also a lot of other different factors. So what kind of walls are suitable for greenery, what quality requirements for construction materials and materials performance also would we find. It sets rules for the statics of fixtures and fastenings. It refers to the OEB guideline number 2 in terms of fire protection. And of course, it also treats irrigation and water supply on a full year performance need-oriented way, and it also encourages the use of rainwater. And of course, you will find the necessary references to other B and L standards in Austria. The life service of at least 10 years must be covered. The installation and maintenance care chapter is quite large. It's set up in a way that, of course, these topics are treated per category. For example, what you can expect, browsing it, you will find a lot of technical specifications, for example, for plantainers and systems and trellises. What the materials, what resistance class materials must bring, for example, against UV, frost, statics, root pressure, corrosion, solvent surface coating, etc., etc. Quite interesting also included plantainer minimum volumes and height. For example, one table that I brought from a standard, you can see it here on the right. So already there is a vegetation form and there is also a minimum installation height in terms of the plantainer and the minimum volume of rootable space in liter per plant. This is not just available for climbing plant walls, but of course also in relation to category 4 and 5, which is the living wall categories, where it also sets basically a minimum of 1 liter per plant. And if there are woody shrubs involved, it goes up to 3 liter per plant. Of course, also in the installation and maintenance part, irrigation and drainage details, what needs to be installed, how does it have to be maintained. It treats a layered root space built up for larger plantainers as well. What I find also interesting is that with vegetation specifications, the standard clearly commits towards species diversity and encourages it. And of course, also mulching layer specifications are included. The maintenance and care is treated by the standard in basically 3 different phases of maintenance and care. You can see them here on the right side. So you're starting with a test operation phase. Once the project basically is finished, then the development maintenance starts. It's actually specified in another standard, the L1120. And following this phase of development maintenance, the ongoing preservation maintenance and care work starts. So what you can expect from the standard is that it brings you test operation actions for these different phases in listing and supported also by protocol documents, which brings us to another important point. Quality assurance and data availability is also a clear commitment of this vertical greenery standard. It stands for object documentation, which also comes along with a long-term concept, of course, for technical maintenance plan, preservation care plan, and periodic visual control. Which is a case, of course, not just for green walls, but for a lot of different other standards and standardized technologies as well. And in especially this section, there is a reference to the attachment A to G of the standard. And I also brought you some examples that you have a bit of an idea what the attachment to the standards are. So attachment number A is additional information regarding potential greening objectives per category that could not make it to this full body of the standard document. Attachment number B are potential coverage degree developments per category. Yeah? For example, what you see here is how this coverage degree, or how did we call it earlier, sorry, coverage factor can develop. On the left side, you see a ground-based vertical greenery with climbing plants on climbing aids. And on the second part, on the right side, you see the same illustration on a category 4. So a wall-bound vertical greening with partial area vegetation supports. So this is, for example, what could be set or used to establish a clear maintenance protocol, also on a timely schedule, and agree, of course, on targets. Attachment C provides technically relevant evidence for contract design between the different parties, from installation, maintenance, and care, time planning, etc. In attachment D, it's about the contextualization of specific offers. So this is covering the aspect of the takeover after the installation and the final inspection, sorry. And also one visual example I brought here was attachment E. This is an example for time schedules, for example, on what different kinds of maintenance and care phases are set on a time perspective until when, and also what happens, of course, when. Attachments F to G, you will find form sheets in attachment number F for maintenance specification. So you can use that form in order to set up a clear maintenance process. And attachment number G, I think it's also quite progressive because it basically sets up maintenance on a service level definition. So a project of different categories can have a certain service level where certain service actions are applied, and there is an optimum version, a standard version, and also a minimum version. A service level agreement, for example, Thomas, would make sure that a wall gets the care it needs, and the risk also that it can fall dry, of course, is outrun. Yes. After this, just shortly after this standard, this is why I also wanted to share this information with you. The Austrian Green Roof Association, together with Grünstadt Grau, implemented a seal of quality for companies. So a company must work according to the presented standard. So not just this one, but of course also the roof and indoor greenery one. And the company must at least invest 20 hours every 3 years in certified training for their employees on green buildings. They must have a valid horticulture business license. And of course, then a lot of projects that they're handing in are being checked before they are awarded the seal of quality, which should also, of course, help investors to see who is really working with the standards, who has broad knowledge of the standards. So I think this is a nice addition to the standard, actually. So coming to my conclusion, because I think we are running late in time and we still want to discuss. future of standardization. I mean, some of you, of course, have followed probably some development from last year, where the European Court of Justice has ruled that harmonized technical standards are part of EU law, must therefore be freely accessible and free of charge. I personally thought that this was a very good news, because this is also why we're doing this webinar today, because we know that not everybody has these standards at home, at their desk, can access them and can actually work with them. You would be surprised how many actually architects and planners just have building norms on their desk, but landscaping norms they're not aware of, which is of course a big problem for our branch, though we are delivering basically technology that is directly attached to the building and is a part of the building, is a cladding variant of the building. So yes, on the other hand, yes, standards are really important. They set minimum levels and they can be also, of course, innovative. So what we witnessed in 2024 is that a lot of national standards institutes, not just the Austrian ones, but also others, are somehow a bit in a phase or state of transition, I think. There is an increasing focus on the development probably of alternative financing mechanisms and service offers, and also the use of artificial intelligence in order to make standards more and better available to everyone. I think this is really, really good. Still, right now, the standard I presented to you today is available as a paid version. So you can download it directly on the Austrian Standards Institute. At the moment, the cost level is 238 euros for these 47 pages. But yes, having said that, I think an investment in a standard when working with the topic on a day-to-day basis is always, besides, of course, a lot of guidelines that are publicly available, important. Because when we're making mistakes, of course, that's not a good thing. So having said this, I think we can look to the future of standardization with excitement. And there is a lot of innovation happening on the living wall sector currently. And yeah, basically, I think that's a good thing. Thanks for listening to my talk. I hope I could, yes, just summarize the most important content of the Austrian vertical greenery standard for you. And I think, Tatjana, these are your slides for later on. So I think we are now in the middle of a discussion.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. I already got some questions in the chat. I still didn't want to interrupt you, so I will ask you now. First one is, how difficult was it to everyone to start complying with the legislation in Austria, from the moment the laws come into the force until they were actually followed?
Haha, that's a good question. I would say, I mean, this standard is still, yeah, let's say we now have 2025. It was published in 2021. The development, it was actually translated to English, is quite recent. So it just came out beginning of this year in English. Yeah, a standard always needs time. And what we also see, I mean, from a VFB, so Austrian Green Roof and Green Wall Association perspective, of course, our members know this standard, they work with it. So horticulturists, planners, landscape architects with a direct link to our association have the knowledge. They also have this document, of course, on their desks, and they are working with it. But just like I said, still, yeah, it needs some time until in general the building industry, so also larger contractors without a specialization on the topic, architects and planners without a specialization on the topic, that start with the first project because our cities are demanding it. Yeah, so we got cities in Austria that have quite strict policy implemented, where buildings, existing buildings and new buildings must get vertical greenery. I would say the uptake is there. So also we see a growth in members and companies and firms working with the standard, but it could be faster.
Thank you for your reply. Thank you. Yes, there are a lot of questions for Thomas, but you're already replying into the chat to some of them.
I think it was a really long question, so
Yes.
I think it would be easier to write down probably the main points. As there is a difference between living walls and climbing plants. I think that's the last question from James Hanna. And living walls, you're right. I think full-scale or large-scale fire tests with a classification is the right way. In the context of climbing plants, I think it's a general guideline is the best way to ensure fire safety. And to go up to the first question, in my opinion, there is no fire safety problem with climbing plants, also on 5, 6, 7, or 8-story buildings. In Germany, we have a high-rise level about 8 stories, so it's from country to country different. But for a multi-story building, climbing plants are not a fire safety problem when they are well maintained, and that's the big thing. Though Vera already told us lots of possibilities to ensure care and maintenance, and that's I think the really important thing at the moment. We have a big discussion in Germany how to ensure that we do not have the cold hatches, because in this case our fire tests are not the right thing, because we made fire tests with not well maintained green facades, but still maintained. It's not like a hedge, and it was really tried out. Though we have the worst case scenario, but we have only a specific part of fire load. So when the fire load become more and more and more, that will be a problem. And then I think that's a really important point for climbing plants. And when we can ensure this, there is no really a big problem in the context of fire safety.
Yeah, thank you very much for your written and oral reply. As well, was only one more question for you, I think. How you can regulate the water content? Do you use sensors on the high points of the buildings as well to see where the risk is higher plant and suffering by the lack of the water amount?
Yeah. For me, okay, as we do not use any things, we made tests with vital plants, normal vital plants, and also with really dried out plants. I told you it was with a heating tent, and we put some of the plants and measure the moisture content in the context of an oven. But in practice, I think it's interesting to know, but we have a long discussion with the fire department, and the fire department's question was, how can I see if a green facade is have a good moisture content and is vital, and how can I see if a green facade is not vital? And I think the easiest way is, like, for example, you do it with wildland fires. When you put your green facade into your hand, and it will break, the leaf will break. That's not a good moisture content. And when it's not break, it's more vital. But our fire tests, all the worst case scenarios focused on whole facades with dried out plants. Though it's really worst case scenario with a moisture content which is not impractical normally, and also the whole area. Normally only a small part will dry out and die, and not the whole area of the green facade. So all of our results are for the worst case, but they are still they can use with the worst case, but in practice it's normally better. And yes, it's interesting to know about the moisture content, but we have no specific thing to measure this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Vera, I think there was one more question to the Austrian project of greening glass facades. And it was a question, if you are trying to protect a glass wall from creating heat and modifying glass effect, magnifying glass effect, how do you create a green shield? Until the plant really mature, there is still risk of being killed by the heat produced by glass. What the solution could be?
Yes, maintenance and care. No, just joking. I think, well, that's a good question. And I would be very interested to hear a bit more about the background of this question, because I mean, we're talking about site conditions. Yeah, so a south-oriented glass facade, which also, of course, gets very hot. It's a specific environment. It's a defined site condition for plants. So the first part would be to, of course, pick plants that can cope with this environment. That's the first thing. So we have a few climbing plants that can withstand this effect. And the second part is, I mean, this controlled shading of the glass facade. Let's probably call it like this. I mean, it's created by a certain leaf area index, of course, that a plant comes along with. And it's also coming along with a certain shading coefficient, probably, that needs to be reached. So also the climbing aids and its grids, if it is a net or if it is a rope, etc. So this must be harmonized. And then we're talking about, for example, modular sizes. So are you, for example, just screening the base level of the building, because this is where the glass wall produces the main problem. Because, for example, behind the glass wall, there is a grocery store, and probably the food and vegetables are close to the windows, and they get basically bad faster, also because of all the sun radiation. So in this case, that can be a win-win situation. Yeah, and what we also have to say is that with this project, of course, we're talking about an Austrian climate. Yeah. So what is an Austrian climate? Austria is very diverse, by the way. So we got high mountains, we got big cities, we got nice countryside and nice nature protection areas. So we are in a continental climate, but specifically a glass wall in Vienna, close to a more Pannonic influence, of course, reaches a different and even higher temperature in summer than, for example, yes, a glass wall more in the Alpine region, or in probably the surrounding of Graz or Salzburg would. Of course, there are differences, yeah. So, the short answer is, to my understanding, from an Austrian innovation point of view, this glass green project has shown that this is possible, no question. But of course, the whole installation of the plants, so the root space, the irrigation, the choice of plants, must be well done to cope also with this environment of this extreme facade exposition, if we are talking south, for example, because I think this was what the main question in the chat was about.
Thank you. Thank you for your reply. And one more question about fire testing for Thomas. Since fire behavior of green walls, green balconies is a new topic, is there actually an established methodology for their fire testing? Do the fire labs know how to disprove fire safety of a given system?
Okay. That's a very interesting question. Also, first of all, we conducted full-scale fire tests outside of any standard. We made fire tests with a focus for generating practical application. That means we do full-scale fire tests to directly ensure the results to establish a guideline. We are really outside of any standard. And all over Europe, there's a big discussion about standard fire tests for facades. We have the same tests, for example, for walls and ceilings and so on, all over Europe. But in the context of facades, there's a really big discussion. For example, in UK, you have a fire test with a really big fire load, and with a really high fire load. In Germany, it's very small, and so on. And since I think 4 or 5 years, we want to establish a Europe facade fire test. It's a really difficult way. So I think we are, and there's no really any standard for balconies, and I think there will not be any standard for balconies in the next years. But normally balconies are not as different when you do standard fire tests. When, for example, living walls, it would be necessary to do standard fire tests. But there's the question, which is the right standard test for the wall, and balcony is the second point. So I think there is no standard at the moment. I hope.
Yes, great. Thank you. Vera?
Yes, I just saw, I think, another request also from Susanna at the chat. She said she was here from Horizon Europe project Bio Agora. Hi, Susanna. Nice to have you here. And they are just forming an expert group to address a request for a practical guide on green roofs and walls in urban areas. That's great. And yes, I think we would be really interested in, of course, helping your expert group further or even participating potentially. So yeah, please write us an email. We will make sure that we get connected.
Yes, I will write.
Thanks a lot. That sounds cool.
Yes, I think we answered all the questions in the chat. If someone sees that we did not answer their question, please repeat it or ask a new one. Yeah, I know also that Vera had some questions to Thomas. Meanwhile, you can start the discussion between speakers.
No, actually, Thomas answered all questions I've had in his presentation. No, I just wanted to say congratulations. I really think that looking back to the history of the fire issue and green facades, that we can look to the back. So I think in my perception, the topic started around 2011, 2012. So we are now already for, let's say, over 10 years working on the topic. It's very good to see that there is a lot of development. There is a lot of agreements, a lot of disagreements. And I think it's really good because this does not just apply to fire testing, but just probably a bit refers to the question I put myself at the beginning also when forming today's talk. So how can we mainstream and standardize our technology? Yeah, because just like every other roof and facade cladding, we are cladding, but still vegetation and plants are something, let's say, very difficult to the building industry, because at the end, I would say we've not been in harmony and together since the very start. Yeah. So what we are trying to do is understand where we, with our technologies, basically can comply, and where we can also possibly test and bring green roofs and green walls basically as a solution amongst other solutions of claddings, and where we can comply to standardized tests, and where probably also a testing method that can be used on other, let's say, great building materials and has been used for decades does not apply, because somehow there is no fit. So the testing method needs to be adjusted, or there must be a new testing method. Thinking, for example, about the topic of energy efficiency, and how actually we are going to make all our existing and new buildings not just well isolated against winter heat, but also very proof against winter cold, but against summer heat. That's a very big topic, and yes, the situation is basically changing, and with a lot of summer heat days and tropical nights in the pipeline, we must shade buildings during the day, and we must evaporate and also create evaporative cooling during night. So somehow all the regulations that are currently under change and need to react also to the impacts and effects of climate change that our cities are facing, that needs to come together. So yeah, it's not black and white. I don't know if I'm alone with this opinion, but I think this is just also your approach, Thomas. So you see a problem, you approach it, and you try to find out, does it fit the common state, or do we probably need a bit of a different approach? That's really helpful.
And really, we need standardization. You said also the question from Pavel Dostal. It's a really point how we can test living walls in the future all over Europe, though we can build a living wall in Germany and also a living wall in Austria with the same facade fire tests. But there is, at the moment, there's no facade fire tests for living walls. And when we have, it's only for one country. So it's really difficult to, in this context, to from Germany to Austria to France and so on, make its own thing. And I think it's very difficult, but it's a task for the next years, for example, for living walls, standardization and fire tests. For example, only one point, but for me, it's very interesting. Yes.
It's the same, like, for example, with a bigger scale renovation question. Yeah, we have such a different building stock across Europe also, of course. I mean, not all our cities, not all our buildings, not all our heritage is the same. Yeah. For example, some got bombed more during Second World War, some less. So the buildings we're finding that we need to renovate, they are quite different. And on the other hand, especially when it comes to vertical greenery, again, I think a lot of plants and also technology we share on climbers, for example. But already when we're talking about living wall systems, what a living wall system is, that it needs to be back ventilated, what materials are used, there is a huge variety. And to my understanding, most of our current living wall providers, they are quite working on a national scope. So we just have a very little number of companies that sell their living wall systems across Europe. Actually, I just have 2 or 3 in my head. It's not more, but there is a huge universe of different technologies available. But these companies are really small and they work on a national to local level. And this is also why I think it's a bit difficult with respect to all these different approaches, materials, build-ups, etc., to come up with an all fits one solution. On the other hand, probably citing, I think, Dusty Getch a bit, who says, does fire burn different in the UK than it does in Austria? Well, okay.
It's the same from state to state or from country to country. It's almost the same discussion. Yeah, there's no difference in fire, but everybody has his own regulations, his own standards, and so it's very difficult. Yes.
Yeah. On the other hand, the more we can harmonize and the more we can also simplify and the more common things we can basically agree on also when standardizing, the better, of course. Yeah, because then we must not repeat this huge work of standardization from country to 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 country. And as we could all see, the presence of green wall and vertical greenery standards and norms in Europe and also beyond is very limited. There are more guidelines. Few guidelines are now already available, but there should be more probably national standardization institutions following. I'm quite happy, and I think that the Austrian Standard Institute is quite innovative, and I think they would collaborate a lot with also other national standardization institutes in case they wished to make a move on vertical greenery. So wherever you're coming from, people who are listening to this webinar, in case you want to work on standards on your national scale, please don't hesitate to contact also the EFB. We will forward you and link you to institutions that can help with that. And I think the more standardization we have, also the more mainstreaming we have, and the more green buildings we can establish.
We have one more question regarding Austria. Do you know the percentage of green covered facades in Austria? Because if there is a standard, there is an assumption that we know the measurement. And if we have more green facades than actually green roofs.
Yes, there is quite an interesting and easy answer to that question, because Austria is one of the countries where we do a regular market reporting. We're also looking at the deployed number of green roofs and green walls on a 3 annual basis. So the last report covering basically, I think, until 2022 was out. It was published by Grünstadt Grau with help of the Austrian Climate Ministry. So yes, we basically have these numbers from the suppliers, and there are also numbers for specific cities, also on the potential, how many walls could potentially be green, and how many green walls are in stock, for example, the city of Vienna. So I can share the links if you would like to.
I shared the link to the Austrian Standard, and I can also share the link to the all others market report.
Market report. Yeah, that would probably be really cool. And I think it was quite interesting what was also said in the chat. So for low-story buildings, like 2 to 3 story buildings, standardization can go well, and I would say can go fast. Yeah, right. Yeah. So easy maintenance and care of plants can be easily taken under control by owners. Yeah, it can. But you don't just have the owners. Most of the time you have facility managers dealing with buildings, and facility managers have a very, yes, of course, also strict and well-organized approach on maintenance and care and what people are allowed to do in the building, what they are not allowed to do. So in general, yes, this option exists. This option, I see it performing in, for example, probably social housing projects or projects with a very strong local community, and where also people on site form a mechanism, for example, like a local association or group of people who then take over maintenance, but also on a legally transparent basis. Yeah, because you must not forget also if a green wall, for example, is not performing or maintenance is not performing, yeah, there must be, yes, responsible people. It must be financed as well. So yeah, in some cases, for example, also citizen-led or tenants-led maintenance is an option, but it should be done on a clear legal basis. We actually had a project in Austria where we worked on this. So what legal frameworks are necessary? A few projects actually, and I wonder if the results are already out. But I'm happy to share in case, who said it? Nasda Pirovic is still here, and she's interested in receiving some information about citizen or tenant-led maintenance and care. Probably also a good topic for a next webinar. Yeah? Maintenance and care is a big topic. Yeah, so most projects are probably not realized because the investment financing is missing, but the maintenance and care financing is missing. So, but maintenance and care is important, not just for fire safety. So, thanks a lot for that comment, Nadesha. Sorry, I hope I spell your name right.
Yeah, I think we slowly come to the end of our webinar, and I wanted to thank you, Thomas and Vera, one more time for your excellent presentations, for taking time answering the questions, and yeah, thank you very much. And I think we can still use 5 minutes in the end to introduce to the upcoming events which we are going to have. First thing, I will maybe share the links to the chat, and this is the links to our social media. And yeah, if you missed today's introduction to the upcoming events, you can just subscribe to our LinkedIn page, for example, and then you will get this information anyway. First, what you see on the screen is our publication, Benefits of Green Buildings. And if you have doubts that green roofs or green walls are not useful, you can read it, because this is a compilation of numbers, data, and facts from different investigations for many past years. This publication was based on the originally German and Austrian publications, uniting the data from German-speaking different scientific works, and we also, as EFB, added a lot of information from other countries, and this is a document which you can access online. We will also give you a link soon, and it's a living document. We will update it with more data which we will find useful, and so on. So yes, please.
Probably also, if we have scientists here listening to our webinar today, this is an open document and process, just like Tatiana said. So we are collecting results of researches on a pan-European context, and very important also on a yeah, different climatic context, so that we cannot just provide results from a Central European, let's say, Pannonic to continental climate, but as well, of course, hot and dry in the south, and it's cold and rainy up north. So yes, please feel free to look at it, and in case you have results to contribute, just drop us an email and we will see how we can integrate. Sorry, back to you, Tatjana.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Yes, of course, we have our YouTube channel. You got a link already. This webinar will be there soon, and you can also see a lot of past webinars if you missed them. And yes, it's a useful resource which is free for you, thanks to the support of our projects and sponsors. We have 2 upcoming conferences, or workshop and conference, which we suggest you to attend. First one will be very soon on 20th of May. It will be offline in Milano, but also online, and it's free and open to everybody. The seats are limited, so if you are interested to join, the workshop on metrics, indicators, priorities for transition to a nature-positive economy, feel welcome to register. I will send you the link now. It's also organized by the project we told you about today, GoNaturePositive, and actually we are working now on the topic how we can actually measure this transition to nature-positive economy, and this workshop will be dedicated to it. So if you want to contribute to it and listen about it, register, it's free. And the second one is a World Green Roof and Green Facade Congress in Basel 2025. It's one of the biggest events on green roofs and walls topic. It will be offline in Basel, and you are also very welcome to attend it. I lost my document with the links, but I will send it to you in just a minute. But if you Google it from the screen, you will definitely find it. Yes, maybe next slide then, and I'm searching for the links. Yes, World Green Roof Day, the most important day for green roofers. Also very soon on the June 6th, a special theme of this day is education. And on this day, we are very welcome to you to share the what are you doing in this field, what you want to do, which roofs did you visit. You can use hashtag WGRD, and you can see also a lot of interesting projects online and offline. Some organizations make an open roof day on this day, so people can access different green roofs, and also in internet you will see a lot of interesting projects, and if you want to showcase your projects and the research on green roof topic, please do it on this day. Then we make ourselves more loud and more people learn about us and know why this is good and important. Thank you. And I think that's maybe all, right? Or what's the next slide? No, we have one more webinar to tell about. We will have 5.
Very important.
Very important. Yes, we will have more webinars this year, and the next one will be in June, Designing for Nature, Biodiverse Green Roofs and Animal-Aided Design. We have already 2 speakers for this event. We plan it very carefully, and a registration link is not available yet, but it will be available soon, and subscribe to our social media channels to get information about it. Yes.
Just to give you a background, because probably you don't know these 2 very important people. So Stefan Brenneisen is also hosting the conference in Basel. He's from Züricher Hochschule für angewandte Wissenschaften, a long-term expert in biodiverse green roofs and actually what kind of animals, so insects, invertebrates, live on them. So I think this will also be his main topic during this webinar. So how to create meaningful biodiversity on roofs with a lot of different materials. And Thomas Haug is actually also from Technical University, I think of Munich, as his second book, but he's also leading studio Animal-Aided Design. And Animal-Aided Design deals with biodiversity and home for nature. on buildings, around buildings, even also on city quarter level. So how can we shape building plots on a way that they are useful to basically also our users from the zoologic perspective. So looking forward to the presentation.
Yes,
I will be there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, that's all updates from us. I sent links to the chat to the upcoming events. Feel free to join them, and we are very happy to see you on our next webinars too. Thank you very much for your participation, for you finding time to taking part into the discussion, for your questions. Thank you one more time to Thomas and Vera for organizing these discussions, answering the questions, your presentations, everything. Thank you. And see you in June.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. See you in June.